Hey, what's up, comrades? So we're still cruising along this Alex having powers beef, but now we're switching it up a little bit to what I refer to as the Return of the Sentinels arc. So we start off with Lorna Dane in her fantastic costume, hanging out, being sad that her magnetic powers are kind of getting weaker, and she doesn't understand quite why. Why? Not right. When a sentinel shows up and grabs her. Then we flip back over to Egypt, where Alex is standing in the rubble of the temple that he destroyed, and he's freaking out, saying, "Don't get near me, something, something, blah, blah, blah." And then a constable on a camel comes rolling up, and he's like, "What's going on?" And then this archaeologist, who, I don't know where this dude came from, is like, "That motherfucker just destroyed this whole temple. Arrest him immediately." And then the X-Men are like, "No, stop that. That wasn't him. That was somebody else." And then the guy's like, "You besmirched the name of this guy." And the X-Men are like, "Oh, fuck yeah." So then the X-Men start fighting the local Egyptian police, where Alex is like, "Nope's out," because he doesn't want to hurt anybody and he needs to hide and some bullshit. Anyway, once the X-Men take care of the police, just beating the shit out of them, he they go to look for Alex, and then they try to contact Lorna Dane back in New York, and somehow their little like ex cruiser or whatever, they can like look into her apartment, which isn't creepy at all, and they see that she's not there, and then it's been kind of roughed up, and so Iceman starts freaking out because he's got a crush on Lorna. Poor guy, he's gonna learn a valuable lesson about that whole business. But for now, he's freaking out, and so the Cyclops is like, "Well, I'm going to look for Alex with Jean and Angel. You guys, you guys as in Beast and Hank, sorry, Beast and Bobby, Iceman. You take this cruiser and head back." And then they're virtually instantly transported back, where they are accosted by the police immediately. So they fight the police off, and then they like jump out the window, and Iceman saves them both, and they head to like Scott's like hidden home he had, his like little apartment that he was having with Jean when he was working at the radio station downtown or whatever. And they're trying to figure out like why the police were so ready to like arrest the X-Men for no reason. And then they turn on the TV and they see dun dun dun, Bolivar Trask's son, other Trask. Oh, I had it in my mind a second ago. Simon Trask? Simone Trask? I think it's Simone. Simone Trask is like, "The X-Men killed my father and destroyed the Sentinels, and the Sentinels were just doing good stuff." It's like total revisionism. And I have all this evidence, and they attacked policemen in Egypt, and yada yada yada. And the X-Men need to be there. My goal in life is to destroy the X-Men. Dun dun dun. And meanwhile, outside the house, we see a Sentinel about to. Oh yeah, and the Sentinels live, and Beast and Iceman are gobstruck. The art on this issue is some of the best for the X-Men thus far, the Uncanny X-Men. Okay, so meanwhile, back in Egypt, we don't get too much more of Scott and Jean and Angel at this point, but we do see that Alex is hiding from them in a cave, and he's like, "I will hide, and I will not hurt them anymore, and I will just remain alone." And he's like crying in a cave, like because it's pretty rough being a mutant and realizing I can never go close to anyone ever again. When a Sentinel shows up and is like, "Aha, I gotcha!" So that's the A plot. The B plot is not really a plot. It's more just like, hey, remember? So we've done all the introductions of how everyone was joining the X-Men. We all know how Jean Grey joined the X-Men. She just like showed up at the very beginning of issue number 1. But now we're going to talk about her powers, and there's nothing crazy here. It's just like shows her like using her telekinetic powers to lift things, to lift herself, to run real fast over lava and stuff, throw things, to like tickle people or whatever. And then she also has the telepathic powers that she learned to harness from Professor X that she didn't have before she joined the X-Men, and that was kind of like revisionist history later on. But now she's like one of the greatest telepaths of all time, hence the Phoenix Saga, which we'll get to eventually. And she's just like, "Look, I can like completely disable this man." Tee hee hee. And then this guy looks like he's in a lot of pain. Gene, golly. And then she's walking down the street, and she's like, "The best part is no one knows I have these powers, and there's nothing to give it away." And we see this like burglar grab like an old woman's purse, and then Gene like throws a trash can in his way and like covers his eyes, and the police grab him, and she's like, "And I have the best power of all, to draw the eyes of any man." And she's like, "I'm so pretty." Great stuff. So X-Men 58 opens up with the battle between the Sentinel and Bobby and Hank as they try to fight them off. They are getting beat pretty good, and they realize that the Sentinels had taken Lorna out of there. So Beast keeps getting captured, and then Iceman will like freeze a tentacle and he'll break out. And then at some point, Bobby creates a bunch of fake Icemen, so to distract the Sentinel for a while. And he grabs something, and throws it over to Hank and says, "Get out of here." And then Bobby creates like this igloo, this ice igloo, to stop the Sentinel from chasing after Hank so that he can escape. Meanwhile, the rest of the X-Men, Scott, Jean, and Warren, are still in like Egypt. But Warren comes back from like a scouting mission saying he can't find Alex and sees that Scott and Jean are dressed in like civilian clothes. And he's like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Well, we got a message from Beast and they got attacked by Sentinels." Like, Sentinels, oh my gosh. And like, yeah, we're going to head back and help him out and meet up with him because Bobby got captured and it seems like Lorna got captured as well. And then Angel's like, "No, I'm going to go." And then he takes off to fly across like the ocean. And Scott's like, "No, you've never done this before. Be careful." So Jean and him hop on a plane and head back. Meanwhile, Hank's feeling really sad about this whole situation. We spent some more time with Simone. I think that's the name. Or it's Larry. It's Larry or Simone. Trask. His dad's Bolivar, which is fun. And so Trask is like, my evil plan to destroy all the X-Men or get revenge for my dad. And I've created this thing and I've created this mountain palace and I'm going to bring this judge in. And, he's trying to fight like a PR battle against mutants. And meanwhile, he opens up the cage or whatever that he has Iceman in. Iceman pops out and like threatens him. And then he's like, "Aha, you fool. I videotaped this. No, everyone will know how evil you are." And it's like, bro, you literally had him in a cage and then released him. He's like, powerless to stop you. So then Iceman gets thrown in another cage with Alex, who is now going by the moniker Havoc. And he has his old school like suit. This is the first time we see the suit, his traditional suit with the concentric circles, and it's black, and he's got like a crazy headpiece with like an atom looking thing. And then Lorna's there too, but she's passed out, and Iceman's like, "What's going on?" And it's like, "This guy captured me, and then he made me put on this suit. Otherwise, he was gonna like go out. He promised me that if I put on the suit, he wouldn't bother you guys, and that he'd leave Lorna alone. But he's a liar." And then a Sentinel, Bobby and him are like arguing about like who's more manly or whatever. And then Lorna gets grabbed by a Sentinel, and then Havoc destroys the Sentinel, and Trask is like, "Ruh-roh, that wasn't supposed to happen." But then he uses some sort of device that, like a remote control on Havoc's headpiece, which kind of doesn't knock him out, but he's like, "Oh, my head." And then the Sentinels capture him all and put him in like frozen containment units. Meanwhile, back in New York or nearby New York or whatever, Angel has finally shown up. Oh, and at some point, someone mentions the living monolith or whatever. Remember, the Pharaoh became the living monolith, and then we see like a clip of him like in a board meeting or something, and he's like, "I am the living monolith. I will rise again." And he starts growing big, and then Sentinels show up and shut it down. When Angel gets over like LaGuardia Airport or JFK Airport or something, he gets accosted by a couple of Sentinels and tries to escape, but he's not able to. And Jean and Scott see this from their plane, and at first they're like, the Sentinels are like, "Oh, we sense more presences." But then like one of the Sentinels is like, "No, we were just ordered to capture one. Let us leave." And so they leave. And so then Jean and Scott are able to meet up with Beast, back with Cerebro, and Beast is like, "I gotta go. I promised Bobby I would do something." And Scott and Jean are like, "Hold on, we gotta like game plan this out, and not just be crazy because we've already lost like 2 of the X-Men, and we're missing Alex, and Lorna's gone, and like a whole mess." And it seems like Trask and this judge, who's the father of Bolivar, who's helping with like the PR battle, are like watching this. And then the judge is like a lot of concerns. He's like, "I really don't feel like all mutants are evil, and this is like a highly unnecessary thing. And I'm still suspect that like the Sentinels, it seemed like the Sentinels captured your dad and turned on him. So, what makes you think it's going to be different?" And Trask's like, "I have this helmet that lets me control them. I can do it. It'll be great." And then at some point he's like wearing this giant, like half the size, like quarter of the size of his chest medallion. And then it comes up at some point between him and the judge, and he's like, "My father gave me this medallion when my mother died and told me to never take it off. And I've never done it, and I never will." And he's like, "Now I'm going to execute all the X-Men. Sentinels, execute all mutants, kill them all." And the judge's like, "I can't deal with this anymore." So he like knocks this like helmet thing off and pulls off the medallion for some reason. And then the Sentinels grab Trask, and he's like, "What are you doing, fools?" I guess like him getting the medallion taken off and getting the helmet knocked, getting himself like punched in the head, fixed a lot of his crazy anti-mutant rhetoric, is what it seems like. Because then he's like, "Oh, I had to change the heart now that you've hit me in the head." Sentinels, stop. And the Sentinels are like, we no longer will listen to you. He's like, I have created you, I am your master. And they're like, no, you see, for once the medallion was removed, we no longer need to listen to you because you're, dun dun dun, a mutant. So now the X-Men are, the remaining X-Men, Hank, Jean, and Cyclops are assaulting the base. They fly on in and they get their craft gets destroyed, but they're able to land safely with Jean grabbing herself and Scott, and then creating like a psychic buffer for Hank when he falls. Then they start climbing on up. Meanwhile, we get a rehash of the whole situation with not Simon Trask, Larry Trask, with Trask and the judge. And the judge knew the whole time that he was a mutant, and he's a mutant because he has clairvoyance. He's able to see into the future, and he predicted the exact time and moment of his mother's death. And so his father, who was so distraught, is the one who crafted the medallion for him. And then part of the reason he was so opposed to mutants is that he didn't want anyone to find out that his son was a mutant. So that's how the whole Sentinel program got going in the first place. But now, obviously, the Sentinels aren't going to listen to a mutant. They refuse. So they throw him in a tank with everybody else. One thing I forgot about the last issue is that the Sentinels showed up to capture Magneto, but we find out that Magneto, the Magneto from the previous arc, two arcs ago, was actually an android, and that's why he was so weak and pathetic the whole time. And Mesmer's like, no, my whole life has been a lie. I've been following a robot. It's pretty good. Because at this point we see that the Sentinels went and grabbed Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, Toad, and then another group went and grabbed Unis, Mastermind, and the Blob. I don't know why they didn't capture the Vanisher. Maybe he's not actually a mutant. Or maybe we just forgot about him forever. So they're all caught up, and that's important because the Sentinels are like, ooh, we sense a presence. And they go to find out what it is, and the X-Men defeat that Sentinel, and then they hide. And then they see a craft come in, and it's the one with Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, and Toad in it. And so they wait for the Sentinel to get like distracted, and then they run in there and they free Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, and Toad, and then put their clothes on to pretend to be them. So when the Sentinel gets back, he's like, "Wait a second, your mutant signatures are different." And then they attack and kill that one. And then they run around and they're like beating the shit out of a bunch of Sentinels. Partially because the Sentinels look at them and they're like, "Hey, you don't look like what your powers actually are doing right now." Dumb Sentinels. Then we get a couple heroic sacrifices. Hank like heroically sticks around and like fights off some Sentinels, and then Jean heroically fights some Sentinels. So that leaves Cyclops to bust into the main area. And the whole time the judge is trying to convince the Sentinels to stop doing what they're doing, but they're like, "No, we're not. We're ordered to protect you and all humans, but we're not ordered. There's no order to like obey you." So when Cyclops bursts in, and at some point, Trask like kind of wakes up in his little cage, and he's like staring at the judge, and the judge is like, "What's he staring at?" And then he looks like beyond the judge, I guess, because the judge is like, "What is that?" And he finds like this gun thing, and he's like, "What am I supposed to do with this?" And for those observant readers from before, that's like the little remote control he used on Havoc to like shut his powers down. So the judge is like, "I don't know what to do with this. I'm not going to kill a mutant." But as soon as Cyclops comes in, he's like, "I figured it out." And so he uses Chickens, I figured it out. So he uses it on Havoc, but Havoc still can't use his powers because he's in like this containment shell. But that's okay, because Cyclops blows up one Sentinel and then blasts the containment shell. And then right as another Sentinel is supposed to grab Cyclops, Havoc bounces out and blasts that Sentinel. And then Havoc's having problems controlling his power, so he runs off. And at the same time, one of the Sentinels tries to get Cyclops, but the judge jumps in the way, and then all the Sentinels like ignore the mutants. They're like, "Oh no, our prime directive is to help humans, so we're going to stop everything and like help this human, and then we'll kill all you mutants." And then the judge is like, "Use logic on them, use logic, they're machines." And Cyclops is like, "Use logic, I don't know what that means." "Oh, I got it." And then right before the Sentinel's about to attack Scott, I think like Havoc, at some point, it might be before this, Havoc like blows himself up in the control panel area. And then the Sentinel's about to get Cyclops, and Cyclops is like, "Wait a second, your job is to, we're just humans who have been mutated, so if your real job is to destroy mutants, you should destroy us at our source. The source of all radiation for the planet." And the Sentinels are like, "Oh, that's a good point." And so the Sentinels fly off into the sun. Because the sun is where all the most of the radiation comes from. Therefore, logic wins the day, and all the Sentinels kill themselves. And right at this point, that's when Jean and Hank roll in, and they're like, "Oh, the Sentinels just all flew off," and Cyclops is yes. And then we get like a shot of a guy being hung up on a wall. One of their guys like drinking scotch or something, looking at him, and the guys look like he's getting tortured, which he is. And then he gets a call, and the call is from. He's like, "Oh, hello. Oh, you're the students of my former friend Charles Xavier. Yes. Oh, yes. I can see your brother. Bring him over immediately, and I will see him." And it looks like this guy who's getting tortured gets killed. Dun dun dun. And the next issue is called Lycos, and Lycos is a very important villain for the X-Men. So this will be exciting. But yeah, that's the end of this arc because we took care of the Sentinels. So we'll move on to the next one. And we're rapidly ending the running to the end of the original Uncanny X-Men run, and then we're gonna skip a whole bunch of issues because they just reprinted these issues for like 30 issues, I think, because I think we pick up again Uncanny X-Men. Well, there's a giant size Uncanny X-Men where we get like the new X-Men, and then we get Uncanny X-Men like 100, I think, which is where it picks up with like Wolverine and Storm and those guys. But there's I have a whole bunch of like guest spots, and then we're gonna deal with the Beast issue as well before we pick that up. But we still got about, I think we have another arc or two before we're done with the original run. But yeah, cool. It's fun times. The issues are definitely, the art's continuing to be excellent, and the setup, and it's like it was kind of janky. It was decent for its time. It was good for its time, and then it kind of got like a little wobbly there, and now it's like really picking up, being cool looking again. And the action's all fun, and like the stories are very more dramatic. So it's unfortunate that it kind of like didn't make enough money to continue running in this direction. But then we got the new Uncanny X-Men, so that was fun. All right, cool. Catch y'all later.